welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Free Expression Friday series, an interview series from ABA's American Booksellers for Free Expression, celebrating the amazing work of booksellers, organizers, and book people in general, fighting for the right to read.
I'm here with Lee Wind, Chief Content Officer for the Independent Book Publishers Association. Lee, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks so much, Philomena. I'm really excited.
Can you just introduce yourself and say what the Independent Book Publishers Association is?
Absolutely. So I wear a bunch of hats. My day job hat is I'm the Chief Content Officer for the Independent Book Publishers Association. We're a nonprofit trade association representing over 3,000 independent publishers. It's a mix of author publishers and small presses and pretty large independent presses like Lerner and Llewellyn, and we really are trying to sort of level the playing field. Consumers don't really care who published a book; they just want excellent books, and we want to sort of level up and even out the playing field. So smaller publishers get a chance for their books to be judged by the quality of the books, and not based on sort of this old school industry sort of privileging the big corporate publishers over smaller voices. And a big part of that is sort of the engine of diversity tends to be from independent publishers. Like Lee and Low is a great example of, publishers that are mission driven, that are out to sort of make more diverse books. And it's not to say that the corporate publishers aren't putting out some beautiful books, but independent publishers are doing a lot of this diverse work, especially in the world of children's and teen books. So it's very close to my heart. Another hat I wear is I'm an author, and I am a gay man and identify as queer. And gosh, I didn't have any books when I was growing up that had anybody like me in them. So I've really dug into trying to go back in a time machine and deliver books to my teenage self, which of course I don't have a time machine. So I do books like, this is a nonfiction book I did called No Way They Were Gay, which came out from Lerner. And this one's actually landed on a lot of challenged and banned lists. So I know we'll get to that. But those are my two main hats. So I kind of come at it from children's literature, but also wanting to help and empower independent publishers.
You talk about leveling the playing field, and of course, book bans impact everyone, but they also impact everyone differently. Can you say a little bit about how book bans impact books from independent publishers in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, the corporate publishers, the big conglomerates, they're publishing Bibles as well. And they're publishing really conservative imprints. And, they're looking at the sort of financial drive, not to be rude, but like the financial imperative of being a giant publicly owned company is very different than the sort of mission driven things we're seeing like Just Us Books, where Sherilyn Wade started a company to publish children's books featuring Black and brown characters because that was their community, and their community weren't getting those books. So independent publishers are finding that with the point of the book bans is not the top 10 lists that all the organizations put out. It's really the chilling effect. They're trying to create a sense of fear in librarians and in teachers in particular, who, even though they know a book would be helpful for their students or their patrons, they're afraid to bring it in because they don't want to have the backlash. So we're even seeing terrible things like entire collections of diverse books just being moved out of the children's section into an area where adults have to get the book for their children. And this isn't about this isn't saying a parent can't choose what's appropriate for their child or not appropriate. This is about trying to hide the existence and empathy for diversity for other people, for other people's kids. And that feels really not cool. So we're hearing, the IBPA is hearing from our member publishers that some of their sales are down 50% to schools and libraries, even when the books are incredible and award-winning. Levine Corrido is a beautiful example of an independent publisher who's they're getting Newbery honors and they're winning all these amazing awards. And yet, because they feature books with indigenous authors who have created it, and queer authors and Black authors. Like, their books are being sort of like really affected by the by this chilling impact of all the book banning. And I think that's very intentional on the part of the banners. So we were really trying to figure out, how do we fix that?
Part of the way of pushing back against that disproportionate impact, at part of what you all are doing to do that, is that you've launched a program called the We Are Stronger Than Censorship program in collaboration with the EveryLibrary Institute. So tell me about that program. Where did it come from? Why did you want to launch it? And what's the mission?
Yeah, thanks. So basically, it started because Taslyn Magnuson, who is a person that works for both Penn and EveryLibrary, she collects a lot of the data on book bans across the country. And she holds these like monthly support group meetings for authors whose books have been challenged and banned. And like I mentioned, because No Way They Were Gay has been on a lot of these lists, I started attending a couple of those meetings, and she and I started talking. And it just feels like, okay, the Washington Post came out last year with reporting that said that 60% of the bans and challenges that happened in 2022 to 2023 were 11 people. 11 people who did over 1,000 challenges between them. And they're very organized. And it feels like the people on the Freedom to Read side, we're not so organized. We're everybody's really passionate and everybody really cares, but it doesn't feel like it feels like we're on defense. It feels like we're running around, and kind of like emotionally as an author, it feels a little bit like this. Like you're just like, can it just stop? And it's not going to stop on its own. And I feel I was trying to come up with something with Taslyn that would be like, what's offense? How do we go on the offense against book bans? How are we not always playing defense? And there's amazing stuff that's happening in a lot of different realms, but we wanted to cook up something where it was like, what's a little bit of a pushback against it in a kind of cool way? Like, how do we say, like, oh, you want to challenge? There was a person in Wisconsin that challenged 400 books in a school library, and all 400 books were pulled off the shelves for 4 months while they were reviewed. At the end of 4 months, most of the books went back to the shelves, but think about it, that's almost an entire semester that every kid in that school lost access to all of those books. So how do we push back against that? The idea was, let's create a project, the program that We Are Stronger Than Censorship, where we basically are saying, for every book challenge, we're going to buy 2 books from independent publishers and donate them. So it's kind of like it's the reverse of the Tom's thing, right? Like, buy a shoe, we're going to donate a shoe. Challenge a book, we're going to buy it and donate 2 books. The idea is that maybe that person that wants to challenge 400 books will pause before they do it and be like, oh, wow, if I do this, 800 books are going to get purchased. So that was sort of the idea behind it. And we also really wanted to highlight the fact that this is disproportionately impacting independent publishers who are really driving diversity. So we have in our inaugural class, we are choosing the last 8, but we are choosing 20 publishers, 20 independent publishers. Each will be represented by 1 title. And the idea is, we're just looking at the month of September to start with, and we are trying to raise enough money to donate 2,000 books. So it will be 100 books, 20 books, 100 each, which is 2,000. My math is a little reversed this morning, but and the idea is that we can help these publishers because we're buying the titles from them. We're buying them in bulk, though, so we are doing back of the envelope math, being very transparent about it. We're paying $5 a book, and then we are also setting aside a little bit. We're setting aside 25 cents of every $8 donated that goes to the authors or the illustrators, depending on if the book is illustrated, because when I know from being an author in my contracts that you make less money if it's a bulk sale. So when we were working with the Authors Against Book Bans, which I'm also a member of, we talked to them about, Maggie had the point that, like, can't we do something for the creators to benefit them? And then there's, all the different taxes and fees and all that and shipping. So basically, it's every $16 covers 2 books to offset 1 ban or challenge. And we have some cool swag. So I'm wearing 2 pieces of swag right now. So this is my Strong Like an Author sweatshirt. And on the back, you have the logo of We Are Stronger Than Censorship. And what I'm really excited about is the logo design. If you look carefully at it, it's the O is like a do not enter sign, but the white center bar of it is opening up to a book being read. And I also have a t-shirt that says Strong Like. I bought these with my own money, and I know that between the 2 of them, I donated 4 books to offset 2 book challenges. So that's a pretty cool way to show your support and get the word out. And I'm really excited. We launched in the beginning of September. You and I are recording this at the end of October, and we've already raised about 1,250 some books have been donated. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we're pacing ourselves. It's going to be a year-long project, and if we haven't pushed back on book bans enough, we'll do it again next year.
That's amazing. And, the swag is obviously, the merch is such a good way to support while doing some good in terms of donating books and also looking good while you do it. The merch looks great. A lot of folks are listening to this as a podcast, so you'll just have to take my word for it. And there are also ones that say, you're wearing one that says Strong Like a Reader. There are ones that say strong like an author, strong like a bookseller, strong like a publisher. So wherever you are in the book world, there's something for you. And, in addition to that, many booksellers are already part of ABFI's Set Books Free project, and keep an eye out because we'll be talking about some ways that you can work with ABFI and IBPA in the future to link that up with the Set Books Free project. What are some other ways that booksellers in particular can get involved in this program and can support what you're doing?
We have this cool thing where bookstores can become partners with We Are Stronger Than Censorship. So it's a pretty basic ask. So we're going to have 20 books from 20 different independent publishers and some really huge name publishers too. And what's really cool is that we're not saying take all of them into your store. We're saying take a look at the 20 books, figure out what you think would go well in your store, and bring them into your store. And we're asking you to have 1 book face out so we can give you a shelf talker underneath with like a QR code or something that links to the program to explain about it, and basically encourage your patrons to not only buy these cool, amazing, diverse titles for themselves, but to buy a second copy maybe and donate it to you so you can give it to people in your community, to organizations in your community. It's like another way of getting your local community engaged in pushing back against book bans. And that dovetails really beautifully with what you're creating, Philomena, with bookstores pairing up with nonprofits that are going to directly deliver the books into people's hands. So I love the synergy there.
Yeah, it's a great way to just kind of double your impact or even go beyond that. So that's really, really incredible. And for everyone else, how can they follow you and IBPA and We Are Stronger Than Censorship? What's the best way to keep informed about everything you're doing?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. So we are stronger than censorship.org. And for all things about that project, for stuff about me as an author, there's my name, leewind.org. Not that I set out to be a nonprofit, but sort of being a children's book author, that is sort of the amount of profit that happens. But it is work of the heart. And for the Independent Book Publishers Association, probably the easiest thing is simply to Google Independent Book Publishers Association, but it's linked through to all the other things as well.
Lee Wind, Chief Content Officer for the Independent Book Publishers Association. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and for everything you're doing to fight literary censorship.
Thanks. And if I could just say a thank you to all the booksellers listening to this. It is so critical the way that you are like the glue that holds a community together. You're not a bar. You're not, I mean, if there's somebody does have a bookstore bar, good for you. But generally, like if you think about like what are the safe places that people can go in a community to interact, and like bookstores are so incredibly important. And I was so sad when like the local gay bookstore closed in Los Angeles, and but I love the indie bookstores around me, and I just feel like keep doing what you're doing, keep fighting the good fight. We need you.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!